Hello, I'm Nicholas Henshall, I'm the Dean of Chelmsford, and this is my Dean's letter for today, Saturday the 13th of March. And the theme is really very forward-looking, as I think it's that time when we need to begin to explore what happens next, where we're going and how that looks. And I've called it a big conversation, a big conversation. Now, you can't tell the story before you've got a pretty clear idea how it ends. That's why I suspect J.K. Rowling sketched out the final pages of the last Harry Potter book before she'd even started work on the first book. And that was after she'd already spent 5 years planning the whole series. You always begin with the end in mind, a quote I've used several times in these letters. To use a very ancient example, the epic poem The Odyssey, that extraordinary story of Odysseus returning from the Trojan Wars, is mostly told in flashback by the main character Odysseus. You can only tell the story when it's actually gradually drawing to its conclusion. As I've often said, both the Old Testament and the New Testament in different ways are essentially written backwards. The Old seeking to explore the issues from the perspective of the exile, and the New in response to the impact of the resurrection. And of course in thrillers, and I've been rather too addicted to spy thrillers in lockdown, this third lockdown certainly, even if the reader is meant to be kept in suspense until the very end, the writer needs to know how it's all going to work out, otherwise they can't write the novel. That's why I'm beginning to invite us, and that includes the very widest circle of stakeholders I can imagine in the life of the cathedral, to start a big conversation. The COVID-19 pandemic is not over, let's be clear about that. And indeed, its impact will be with us for some years to come. There is no doubt about that either. But we are entering a time where we can begin to seek to make sense of this last year and work together on what that means for the future. So as we seek to steer the path ahead, we are beginning to plan a series of big conversations, a bit like the round tables that we've had regularly over the last 7 years. And these conversations will then become a single big conversation, an opportunity to listen to all the voices, Now, these will be opportunities, both face-to-face and online, for anyone who feels they have a stake in the life of the cathedral to come together to reflect on the last year, to share stories of our experiences, and to begin together to shape the future as the cathedral seeks to serve the city, the diocese and the region in a new landscape. Bishop Gully is eager to engage with the cathedral and contribute her thinking about the cathedral's role in supporting her ministry and the networks of the diocese. And we will be seeking similar contributions from a range of other people who can bring fresh perspectives to the table. But at the heart of it, over the coming months, we will be inviting people to join in this big conversation, to share experience. That will be in small groups as well as larger gatherings, online and in person, over a cup of tea, a bottle of beer or a glass of wine, in the cathedral as part of something like Welcome on Wednesday, or on a Zoom coffee meeting, in someone's home, across our fellowship groups, as congregations and community groups, in junior church, even over a barbecue in Guy Harling's when such gatherings are possible and indeed legal. In one of these Dean's letters last September, I referred to the Chancellor's announcement of the job retention scheme. Talking about the economy, Rishi Sunak used a phrase that, for me, is a fantastic invitation to us here at Chelmsford Cathedral. Speaking of the impact of coronavirus, he said, in exactly the same way an Old Testament prophet might, our plans need to adapt and evolve in response. And looking forward to our future prospects, he said, our economy is now likely to undergo a more permanent adjustment. That is precisely the place in which we now stand as a cathedral. Our plans need to adapt and evolve in response to the impact of the last year, as we recognise that going forward, the cathedral and its mission and ministry as a whole are now likely to undergo a more permanent adjustment. That lies at the heart of this big conversation. How are we to respond to the permanent adjustment in the life of the cathedral and the networks that it seeks to serve? And indeed, the wider culture of the city, the diocese and the region. I'm not suggesting that we'll all agree or that there will be some kind of final answer. Change, after all, has been the experience of the Christian community from the very beginning of our history. And the important question is always the same one. Do we want to be part of the change or simply passively let it happen to us? Many of the themes of this big conversation will emerge as we talk, and my hope and expectation is that we will be surprised by some of the ideas that emerge. The boundaries of the conversation are very broad, in a sense as broad as our imaginations. But I encourage us all to keep in mind the 4 themes of the Cathedral's strategic plan, which continue to shape the work of the Cathedral's governing body and therefore continue to focus and frame our priorities together. The Cathedral as a thriving, outward-facing community. The Cathedral as the Church of the Bishop. The Cathedral as a community or communities shaped by worship. And the Cathedral as public space for all. I invite all of us to ponder these themes. And when will this big conversation begin? Well, in a sense, I hope it already has begun, as you've been able to share experiences and think about the future yourselves. But as a formal process, it will be after Easter, that great season of hope and renewal. So my blessings and best wishes and my invitation to get involved in whatever way. I mean, you can write me an email now. You can have a conversation and ring me up. But better is how we gather in groups and communities and tease away just what this permanent adjustment is going to look like in our worship, in our mission, in our ministry, in our common life, in our learning, in the networks we seek to serve, and indeed in everything we do in what feels like a significant moment of opportunity. God bless you all.